My name is Alexa Pollmann and I run a design studio called PEUT-PORTER. The project originated when I was back at the RCA in Design Interactions, where we were asked to come up with a future form of statehood, and I looked into a future form of governments for that. So I looked a lot into politics and how technology actually changes our way to behave in terms of political standards, and that was the starting point. So it was called Indivicracy, the tale of a future government back then. And then I came to the Design Museum because they opened up the theme of migration, and my statehood was one that was actually moving around. It was followed around by a social network and not territorial anymore. So there's 4 characters in the project that explain the history of the statehood. And the first character is the Roma, and the Roma actually came from migrant workers, and I realized that migrant workers, which is a massive number of people today, often suffer from legal injustices. So the idea was if their government would actually follow them around, they wouldn't have that problem. And it was also the major inspiration for me because they wear blue overalls, and I felt like they were unified by those blue overalls. And from being a fashion designer, I guess I saw quite a story in that. So I decided to design the national costume of this future statehood, and I started out with that blue overall. And then the next one was the Recreationalist, kind of what you would consider a tourist, but then there's a big story behind that as well about American RV riders who actually leave their home. And then the next one is the provider, and the provider is a person that I consider to live globally but not actually leave a certain territory. So he's a digital person who lives in the digital realm, and as that he's a very globalized personality. And then there is the last one, which is the Motionist, who is really celebrating that kind of life and surely is inspired by old cultures that actually have traveled around to entertain a lot. But at the same time, he is for me that character that was inspired to tell how people might actually become really proud of being non-settled anymore. The reason why I chose to do masks was, on the one side, that I wanted to erase any form of territoriality in the visual outcome, but then also I saw the faces as something that actually is erased when you look into the digital realm, and the whole technology background that comes into play in this project is kind of making us into characters. So these characters were formed by those masks, and obviously they often are used in cultural or national costumes. So I thought that's a nice way of translating it into the future. The aim of this exhibition for me and the project was basically that I wanted people to be able to understand the culture that would rise out of unsettled existence. And the characters beforehand were kind of more understood as monuments, whereas now I really wanted people to be able to connect to them and understand how they would come about. So I worked with the dancers and I explained them who those people are, and we then, in order to tell the whole storyline, made up different movements that would explain why they would travel. So for example, the migrant worker who travels a lot between 2 points, one is his home country and one is the place where he's working, so he would travel a lot back and forth, and so on and so on. So each of them has a motion that actually explains his motivation to migrate. So I worked with a choreographer called Didi Feldman, who I luckily met as I saw a piece of her, and who was quite eager to work with me, and it was a very nice collaboration, and she helped me to also define the characters, and that was, I think, one of the nicest things about the whole residency, that I actually got to work with all these really inspiring people. I wouldn't describe it as a brand per se. I think PEUT-PORTER is more an exploration into what fashion could be, or what it actually means to me. And the title already tries to do so by saying peut-être is kind of the French word for maybe, what may be or what might come within the fashion world. But what I use it for is really to tell the stories that actually are hidden in our garments, and how we can use them to tell social tales about the future and social circumstances, which they are doing right now already. And I think there's a lot of political messages hidden in garments as well, so I think they are quite a good medium to actually discuss the future of politics.